destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moth and rust do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness?
So before services, Jerry Tyler came up to me and asked me, hey, where is it that you always find those used cars? Because if you've hung around me long enough, you know I have a tendency of finding random used cars on things like Craigslist and stuff like that and keeping them for a little while and dumping a bunch of money into them with the goal of making money off of them, and then it doesn't usually work out. But over the years, I've owned quite a few automobiles, and I was showing Jerry on my phone that if you click on Facebook and then you go to Facebook Marketplace, that's the current place where you can find probably most cars right now is on Facebook Marketplace. No one uses Craigslist anymore. But when I clicked on Facebook Marketplace and pulled up my Facebook Marketplace account, all of a sudden it has all of these vehicles for sale that it knew that I would like. Like it knows me. And I've mentioned this before. But it popped up El Caminos, because I've been on an El Camino kick lately. I want an El Camino. I think it'd be really cool. And maybe I'll grow a mullet too while I'm at it. But so I'm looking at El Caminos, and then it popped up these hardtail choppers, because if you have an El Camino, you got to have a chopper to go in the back. So I've been looking at those. And then it popped up these 1950s rat rods, because I want a pre-smog rat rod. All this stuff I'm not going to ever get, but right now, that's what I've been looking at, and Facebook knows it. So when I clicked on Facebook Marketplace, it goes, here's what you want. And I'm like, oh, you know me so well, Facebook Marketplace, right? It knows me, but the reason it knows me is because I've given it all that information over the years. I know I've illustrated this probably 1,000 times in sermons, that the way the internet works is you're the product and it's getting information from you and selling you to advertisers, because everything you click on, everything you view, everything you shop and so on, it's taking that information and it creates a profile about you of what you like. I remember a few months ago I mentioned that it thought that I wanted steel birds that are nailed into trees. Curtis bought me one of those, by the way, and it's in my backyard. It wasn't as great as I thought it would be. The internet didn't know me that well. But right now it knows that Cliff Sabra wants a pre-smog El Camino, and it's trying to sell me one. But as we've talked about before, internet marketers spend a lot of time creating, advertising content specifically curated to your search habits, and they're really good at it. It's mindless. It's not a human being behind it. It's just an algorithm, but it's taking all this information and creating a profile about you based upon what you look at online, how much time you spend online, when you're usually online. It knows all that kinds of stuff, and it creates information for you, a profile about what you're into, what you like, what you would enjoy. In fact, I don't know if you even knew this, even us as a church, we sometimes buy ads on the internet. So like if we're having a vacation Bible school for our coming up, on Facebook or Instagram, I will purchase a targeted, not a generic, a targeted Facebook ad. And the way we target is we set parameters. We want people who like our page and pages similar to ours. So if you follow a bunch of churches in Visalia, you'll probably see our ad. Or if it's an event for those 18 through 25, we will target the ad to reach 18 to 25-year-olds that also like churches in the city of Visalia. If it's a men's event, we will say we're going to target 18 to 25-year-old men in the city of Visalia who like churches in Visalia. And we can also go, we also want people who like Bibles for sale and El Caminos. I mean, weird mix, but it'd be all people I want to hang around. That kind of thing. That we can target ads like that based upon different preferences. Nothing necessarily wrong with that, but you can tell a lot about a person, what they're into, what their interests are, based upon what they spend their time doing. The internet's not your thing. It's the same way with your budget, right? Have any of you ever got at the end of the year, because we're at the end of the year, your bank or your credit card or something sends you an end of the year report? And then you're really sad, right? But it shows you how much you have spent in different categories. That's not a real one. I just picked one up off the internet, so go trying to make sense of that. That might not add up to 100, okay? Everybody's staring at it, breaking it down. But if you were to look at yours, what would it show? How much you spent on housing, how much you spent on giving, how much you spent on entertainment. The one that always is shocking is how much you spent eating out, right? That's where, there's no way I had Starbucks that much. Wow, I really did have it, that much, right? You look at that end of the year report, and you see a breakdown of what you spent your money on, and you start going, all right, family, that's it. We're changing our priorities. We're going to have a budget, and we're going to stick to it, and it lasts for about a week or so, and we go back into our same kind of routine. But the reality is, where we spend our money and what we view online and all those kinds of things are a pretty clear testimony to what we actually value. Because the fact that the internet knows that I want to buy a 1972 El Camino makes it out to see me, you know what, I'm probably spending too much time searching 1972 El Caminos on the internet. Because what I'm thinking about all the time, what I'm viewing all the time is a testimony to what I value. It's not trying to sell me Bible curriculum. Maybe because it's not as expensive. I don't know. I'm going to go with that. That makes it sound better. No, but it knows that Cliff is probably more likely right now to buy an El Camino than he is to buy a new set of commentaries on the book of Acts. What you think about is a testimony to what you value. What you thought about this morning when you got up, what you thought about last night when you were laying in bed, what keeps you up at night, what gets you up early, those things are the things that you value the most. What you view is a testimony to what you value. Maybe you're not a social media person, but you sit in front of the TV. What do you view on there? Or even, in fact, we're just viewing that. Was that what we value? What you view is a testimony to what you value, and what you spend your money on is a testimony to what you value. I'd like to claim that I'm a big-time saver, because that's what I spend my money. Yeah, but Cliff, you're also a big-time Dutch Brothers, which, by the way, Dutch Brothers has the coolest thing ever that apparently I'm obsessed with because I spent a lot of money on it. They have these, not muffins, but muffin tops. Seinfeld was right, okay? It's coming to the muffin tops. And they have lemon poppy seed muffin tops. They're delicious, but you know what? I spend up way too much money on those. Apparently, I value those more than I value giving in another area. What we spend our money on is a testimony to what you value, and that's what I believe Jesus has in mind in Matthew chapter 6. So the passage that Richard read for us, turn there if you would, Matthew chapter 6, starting in verse 19. We're going to walk quickly through this passage. A few years ago, when we were going through the Sermon on the Mount, I know we went in detail in this, so I don't want to break it down too much, because I'm assuming you all memorized that, you understood it, you took immense notes from this passage, so I don't need to break this part down again. But there's some cool stuff that Jesus mentions here, and I want us to break it down and talk about it, because as we're talking about the end of the year, because this is the end of the year. Right now as a church, Kenny and Greg, and I'm looped into the conversation some too, we're talking about budgets for the church, about where we spend our money, okay, as a church, which is the Lord's money, by the way. That sounds bad to say, our money. And as a family, maybe right now you're thinking about, okay, end of the year stuff, and what I've been spending money on, what do we do with our time, what do we do with our, our extra resources. You're thinking about those kinds of things and planning. Hopefully you are. We should plan. There's nothing wrong with planning. But in Matthew chapter 6, in verse 19, Jesus is going to lay out for us a teaching that I think pretty much presents the idea that we as Christians, as disciples of Jesus, need to be people who change what we value. We need to make sure that we are valuing the right things. We might like hardtail choppers, but that can't be what I value the most. Those are motorcycles, by the way. If you're like, what is that term? Oh, and El Camino is a half truck, half car. Coolest vehicle ever built, if you didn't know what that was. But we got to change what we value, because what we value can't be possessions. What we value can't be entertainment. What we value can't be power. What we value can't be money. Our theme this year has been about living changed lives. We need to change what we value. Let's read. Jesus here in the middle of his sermon, his words, says, "Do not store up for yourselves or lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroys, where thieves do not break in and steal." In our Luke class on Sunday morning, which I encourage you, come to Bible class. Great chance to dig into the text and ask questions. In Luke, Jesus has been emphasizing this idea a lot. That if we only focus on physical things, you're missing the big picture. The people were looking for a sign, and he goes, well, no, that's wickedness you're seeking. And then they were like, give us this power, Jesus. And he goes, instead of seeking this power, you should be excited that you're going to heaven. And then others, they're like, Jesus, it was so amazing. We cast out demons. And Jesus goes, you know what's really amazing? Your names are written in the book of life. It's all about changing your priorities. Jesus here says, do not lay up treasures for yourself on earth, because moth and rust will destroy them. Thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. Right? Things on this earth will not last. We understand that. When I go on Facebook Marketplace and look at cars for sale, old cars are getting more and more, even the ugly old cars, like a 1975 Ford LTD four-door, which no one wanted, right? That's crazy expensive now. Because what happens? They rust, they rot. Even in the climate of California, they slowly decay and they go away. And some of them get stolen, some of them get wrecked by some teenager who turned it into a hot rod, and then all of a sudden, they're more expensive. They're not around. They don't last forever. Jesus makes a great universal point. Why in the world would we store up for ourselves treasure in a place where it won't last? Why in the world do we make such a big deal about everything right now, and physical things and possessions and laying up treasures now? Because it will not last. The only place where treasure is going to last forever is with Jesus, right? He says, but lay up for yourselves treasure in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroy, where thieves do not break in and steal. We need to make sure that we value the right items. We must change what we value. Then in verse 21, Jesus gives this concluding statement. He says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is why budgets can be very revealing, because you realize where you spend your money and you realize what you value. And sometimes it's great. Like, man, I spent money providing food for my family and education for them, and we gave, and okay, those are good and honorable things. But at the same time, sometimes you're like, I spent that much money on eating out. I spent that much money on clothes that I don't wear. I spent that much money on toys and recreation that I really wasn't that important. I don't even do anymore, whatever it was. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. I know sometimes, we were, me, Kenny, and Greg, even looking at the church budget, we're kind of shocked at ourselves. Like, that's what we valued? That's what we spent? I mean, our congregation contributes, but yet we spend that much on a building, that much on this, on that, but this little over here. It can be very telling because it tells what you value. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So Jesus goes on then and he asks a question about focus. He asks, what are you focused on? What do you value? What do you look at? He says the eye is a lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, then your whole body will be full of darkness. We talked about this morning in Bible class. He's not talking about like what you see necessarily. He's talking about what you think, how you view the world. How do you view what really matters? If you view possessions as what really matters, it's going to tell a lot about your insides. If you view money as what really matters, then it's going to tell a lot about who you are. If the way you view things is bad, if your eye is bad, the whole body is view of darkness. If our mindset is flawed, if our worldview is incorrect, darkness is in us. And he says, if then the light is in you as darkness, how great is the darkness. If our priority, if our value is not the right items, darkness is what is on the inside. But then he concludes, he says, no one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he'll be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Our priorities have to be right. We have to change what we value. We can't have it both ways. I'm going to do everything I want over here, and then, oh yeah, no, I love Jesus too. We can't have both. We can only have one master, and that master has to be Jesus. So the lesson then for us, if we can only have one master and the master has to be Jesus, if my budget, if my internet history, if my schedule, if my viewing habits, if my conversation topics, if what I'm thinking about are not focused on Jesus the most, there's an issue there. I am valuing the wrong thing. Jesus and his kingdom must be number one. You're thinking, well, how can you prove that, Cliff? Fast forward a few verses in this same passage. After Jesus talks about focusing on money and how that's bad, then he's going to talk about don't worry about certain things. Then look at verse 33. Verse 33, he says, but seek first, number one, seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness. That's what we put first. Not what I want, I put his will first. It's not, oh, I'm going to try to work his will in around what I want. It's no, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness. And then God's going to take care of the rest. But we have to value, we have to change what we value. We have to value the right things. We have to focus on Jesus. So then how do we make application of this? We're going to have a homework assignment this morning. All of you guys love homework, right? We're going to do a homework assignment. This last week, or actually 2 weeks ago, at work, I was given this assignment. And it was this assignment where I had to come up with a pie chart. I don't know why we were doing this. It's one of those like team building things. But anyway, it was come up with a pie chart of your own values, okay? And you had to it had to equal 100%. And you had to put in percentage markers for these different things. And it was kind of a fun share process thing. And I went online and I found me piechartmaker.com or something like that. And I started entering in my numbers. It was like, all right, I value Jesus this much. And it was like, then my family takes up this much of my time, and my hobbies here, and eating here, and all of that. And which is kind of hard because following Jesus also comes into me being a husband and a father. So it's not a perfect chart. But it was kind of interesting to have to think about, what do I value? What's important to me? What do I think makes up the most of my identity? It was an interesting kind of assignment. But let me encourage you to do something like that. Make a personal chart. Maybe you're not good with graphs and pie charts. You're like, that sounds horrible. Claire told me, why are you putting statistics in your sermon, Dad? That when she saw me working on these slides. I'm not putting statistics in the sermon, Claire. I'm just making a point. But if you were to chart out what you value, and you had to assign a number to it, being honest. No, don't be like, this great romantic idea. I put 100% on Jesus all the time. That's great. I bet you do. We all struggle with this, right? Be honest. If you were to chart out what you value based upon what you do and all that, what would that chart look like? If you were to chart out what you value based upon what you spend your time doing, oh, see, now it's different. Now it's not theoretical. Now it's what we actually spend our time doing. What would that chart look like? How much time is devoted to this, to that, to watching? Right now, I've been stuck on Malcolm in the Middle episodes on Hulu. You know what I mean? How much time, according to the phone, a lot of time has been focused on that. So if you were to break down your day, your month, your year, how much time do you spend in different areas? Don't have to be exact, but what about how you spend your money? If you were to lay out how you spend your money, what does it say about what you value? Numbers don't really lie, right? I mean, math is supposed to be pretty honest. I'm not a philosopher and I'm not a mathematician, but I think that's kind of how that works. It'll tell a lot about your priorities. What about us even as a church? Maybe we did this as an individual, but maybe we came together and we said we want to do it as a church. And maybe in our small groups tonight, discuss it as a small group. As a church, if we were to lay out what we value, what would we say the most? What would it look like on a chart if we were to graph it in some way? Or what do we do when we spend our time together? What do we spend our time together doing the most? Is it, praising? Is it study? Is it potlucks? Is it work projects? Is it serving the poor? Is it missions? Whatever it is, how we spend our time together. What would that chart look like? Even money, and I hate to bring up money stuff, but it is church budget time and things, and we've been looking at how we spend our money. And if money is a testimony to what we value, it seems we value facilities more than missions. We value paying the Edison bill than we do paying missionaries and things. It's telling. Well, how would our chart look if we talked about how we as a church spend our money? Ultimately, what it comes down to is this. We are only here on this earth for a short time. We are only living one life. Okay? I mean, I know Bible talks about kind of some numbers, approximately how long we're going to live, and it'll give or take a couple decades in there, but we only are going to live here for a short time. Say 100 years. 100 years out of how many years of existence for our soul? 100 years maybe in this life, on this earth, and then the rest of our existence as a being is hinging upon what we do for this 100 years. Is it going to be with Jesus or not? We only have one life to live right now, and it must be lived for Jesus. It can't be lived for just recreation. It can't be lived for just free time. It can't be lived to pursue our own passions and lust and sinful desires. It must be lived for Jesus. And that's not my words, that's His. In Matthew 6, verse 33, Jesus says, "Seek first His kingdom and His righteousness." So as this year comes to a close, and you're thinking about what you've done this year, what you spent your money on, what you value, and then even as a church, as we're thinking about what we've done, what we value, what we spend our money on, and we're thinking about what should we be spending our time doing, and so on, let's make sure that individually, as individuals, in our households, as families, and collectively as a church, without a doubt, we end this year as changed disciples who are seeking first His kingdom and His righteousness. The lesson is yours this morning. We're going to sing a song here in just a moment. If you have a need, you can let it be known. As together we stand and as we sing.